The Royals rotation has been great to begin the year, but there's one aspect that I think is the most important above all the rest. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can give me a follow on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener, welcome in. We love new listeners here on the Locked On Royals channel. And if you want to know a little bit more about me, I'm based here in Kansas City. I work in sports over at Sports Radio 810 WHB. I do some hosting, some co-hosting, and some producing, and talk about all things involving sports. But when you come to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you are getting 30 straight minutes of the Kansas City Royals, who have now won 5 in a row. 5 straight wins for the boys in blue. They're going to be taking on the Astros tonight, trying to go for the series. They'll have Seth Lugo on the bump, who has just been fantastic in his first 2 starts as a member of the Royals. And if they win tonight and make it 6 in a row, they will be one of 3 teams since 2000. This is club history to have a winning streak of 6 or more games. The 2003 Royals, if you can remember, won 9 straight to open up the season, and the 2015 Royals won 7 straight to open up the season. So since 2000, this Royals team would join those 2 with the longest win streaks in April, and both of those teams finished with a winning record. Though the 03 Royals didn't make the playoffs, the 2015 Royals, of course, won the World Series in 5 games over the New York Mets, who the Royals will see this coming weekend. So what is it about this team that is so much better? What is it about this group that is miles ahead of last year's squad? Now, it is 11 games. You don't have parades for 11 game starts in which you're 3 games over 500. You don't do that. But you can admit that these first 11 games have pleasantly surprised you. It surprised me. You know, I looked at the 11 game sample size before the season started, or maybe the first 15 games, and went, okay, if you can just hover around 500, you feel pretty good. I did not expect them to win 7 of their first 11 games. I did not expect them to be 7-4 after losing that game last Wednesday. It's been a week since the Royals have lost, but last Wednesday against Baltimore when they choked away that lead late in the final 2 innings. But to me, what has been so telling has been the rotation. I mean, it's obvious that Michael Wacha throwing 7 shutout, or Brady Singer throwing 7 shutout, Cole Reagan's throwing 6 1/3 scoreless with 7 or 8 Ks. Like, that is going to be the outlier. Not those pitchers can't do that all the time, but over the course of a season, you're not going to do that night in, night out. If they do, the Royals will win 160-something games. Actually, they can't. Actually, they could go 100, and what would they be? No, they can't. They can go 158-4. That's what it would be. I told you I was terrible at math. To me, what has been the difference is they've been elite, of course, as a rotation, but there has been 3 starts that have been okay. They've been very iffy, kind of middle of the pack. Like, you're not going to go tweet about that start. You're not going to hear people talking about it. They just kept the team in the game. Michael Wacha, and his first start as a Royal, through 5 innings, gave up 3 runs. All of them came in 1 frame. I think he would tell you that there were just too many mistakes he made in that 1 inning, but they were in the game. The Royals lost that one, but they had a lead. And in the later innings, they were tied. Then they were down 1. They tied it again and lost on a walk-off. Alec Marsh on Sunday had a very similar start. You know, he wasn't missing too many bats against a bad White Sox team, and he didn't get to 5 innings. But it was 4 2/3, and they were only down by 3 runs. Like, I look at some of those spots for young pitchers, not so much Michael Wacha, but for Alec Marsh, he could have unraveled. First inning didn't look that good, but got out of it with no damage. Then the later he got in the start, it wasn't there for him. But he didn't unravel. He didn't spill all the beans. He didn't spill the chili like Kevin did in The Office. And then the other night, Cole Reagan's your ace, just wasn't Cole Reagan's. It wasn't terrible. He just wasn't what we're used to. And yet against a very good lineup, and you can say, oh, the Astros are 4-8. Don't give them too much credit. The Astros are going to be good. They're going to be in the thick of the American League West race when it's all said and done. You got Jose Altuve. You got Yordan Alvarez. You got Kyle Tucker. You got Chas McCormick. You've got those guys who have plenty of postseason experience and have been very good. Jeremy Pena is another guy. I mean, over 50% of their lineup is tough to face. And they were seeing Cole Reagan's well. Cole Reagan's was living a lot in the zone, and he gave up 10 hits over 5 innings, but only 3 runs. And that, to me, is showing the growth. That, to me, is showing evolution, if you will. It's not going to be like this all season long. But we're also aware of the fact that on those nights when they don't have it, what can separate your rotation from the middle of the pack and from the really bad ones is when they don't have it. They're tagged for 3 in the first. How far can they go? Last year, they were tagged for 3 in the first. They would be tagged for 8 by the end of 3 innings. That's just the way it went. And as I said, it's a small sample size. But you have this competition brewing in the rotation where it's just next man up. You know, Seth Lugo looked at Cole Reagan's start and said he didn't have his best stuff. If I don't have my best stuff tonight, I need to try to one-up that. Need to get through 6 innings. The Royals signed Seth Lugo for his ability to throw tons of quality starts. As we mentioned in a podcast episode earlier in the week, the Royals had 32 as a team last year, which was tied with Oakland for the worst, the lowest amount of quality starts in baseball. Seth Lugo had 17 himself for the Padres last year. So that goes back to the point of your rotation can keep you in games. Quality start after quality start after quality start. These are all very important things for this team to grow. And then you go look at some of these advanced numbers. Maybe not advanced numbers, just data that is provided, like run differential. The Royals have the 4th best run differential in baseball. It's because those starters are not unraveling in losses. They have 4 losses. 2 of them were on walk-offs. 1 of them, they were tied going into the 9th, and the other one, they were down by 1 going into the 9th. The starters did not unravel in those games. The only time a starter, I would say, quote-unquote, unraveled a bit, but that's too strong of a word, was Walker coughing up a 3-0 lead in 1 inning. Other than that, it's piecing it together. Like those offenses that are facing this Royals rotation, they have to piece it together. Last night, they got Reagan's for 3, but it was spread out a little bit. And they got 1 in the first, even though they loaded the bases with nobody out. And then Reagan's found a way to dance out of it. That, to me, is the most impressive part. I love seeing a Royals starter throw 7 shutout innings. But the good part about seeing your starter on an off night is it gets to test the offense. And in the win last night, the walk-off, the offense had time to collect itself, to adjust to Christian Javier, tie that game, just like Baltimore did against Kansas City off Walker. They did it in 1 frame. Bullpen held it down late. And then they walked it off in the 10th. And by the way, the Royals bullpen, who is seen as just this disaster, the worst bullpen the Royals have ever had, they're 16th in baseball now in ERA. Not perfect, but they're no longer dead last. And that's why, good or bad, you can't always overreact to just numbers, batting average, ERA. You kind of look at what some of those advanced numbers are telling you. The advanced data is telling you. And right now, it's showing that the Royals are a good team through 11 games. It's 11 games. It's April. But as I brought up, April's been a terrible month for this team. If they win tonight, they will join 2 other clubs in 24 years that had a winning streak of 6 or more. Both of those teams finished with a winning record. One of them won the World Series. So those are the things you have to look forward to. And when this rotation, health is going to be the most important. I think that a lot of these guys have the track record. One of these guys has tremendous upside. Brady Singer looks like he's bouncing back a little bit. And Alec Marsh has a pretty good ceiling. Like across the board, I like the talent in the rotation. I like the stability. I like the consistency. They stay healthy. There's not going to be too many outings this year where somebody just completely bottoms out through 2 innings. It could happen. I would say Alec Marsh or Brady Singer has a likely chance of that happening once or twice this season. But for the other guys, the top 3, You look at maybe a night they don't have it, and I could be wrong. Tonight, Seth Lugo could be charged with 7 runs in 2 innings. But his track record last year would tell you that he was good at keeping his team in the game. The Astros will be throwing a rookie making his major league debut. The Royals will be going with their number 2 starter, or at least it was to begin the year, in Seth Lugo. But love what I've seen from the rotation and keeping the team in the game, keeping the offense in the game. That's been the most impressive part for me. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, am I worried about this player in the lineup? We discussed it last week, but now it's been another week and not much has happened. Should I start sweating about it a little bit? We'll talk about it next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Be sure to give me a follow on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Before we go any further, want to give a shout out to one of the sponsors today in PrizePicks. Spring training is over and baseball season is officially underway. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePick entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your PrizePick entries today. Get in on the playoff action as well and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. Playoffs begin April 20th, which is in 10 days, but the play-in rounds will begin April 16th, 17th, and 19th. Overall, I think the offense is in a good spot. You are getting good contribution at the top of your lineup with Maikel Garcia and Bobby Witt Jr. The meat of your lineup, with the exception of the number 3 hitter, Salvi, MJ Melendez, and Velasquez are giving you a lot of pop in the middle of your order. The bottom of the lineup, Adam Frazier, Hunter Renfroe, Kyle Isbell. Isbell's been slumming a little bit of late. Hunter Renfroe surprisingly hit in 5 straight games, I think it was, hitting close to 300 over his last 5. So he's been doing just slightly better, but it also was a dismal start to the year. The number 3 hitter, though, is what we are going to be talking about, and I believe he knows he's been a talking point amongst the fan base over the last week or so. Vinnie Pasquantino's slow start is baffling to me. Certainly because I picked him to be an all-star representative for the Royals, and still I'm not going to abandon that after 11 games. I thought at the end of the Baltimore series and in that White Sox series, he was hitting the ball hard. A couple of his outs, he still was hitting it hard, not lifting the ball as much as I would like to see, but nothing is going his way right now. It was cool to see last night, at least, with the game on the line, if you will, down by 1. He hit a ground ball the other way, and it was a throwing error by Alex Bregman, but it was better than a strikeout. And sometimes when you're struggling that much, you just need to have something go your way. You just need some luck. And where I used to take the approach with him, and I say used to, like a week ago, I would take this approach of, well, he's hitting the ball hard. Eventually, one of those scorchers is going to find a hole, or he's going to rip one into the gap. It's going to be a double. He's going to clear the bases. He's going to hit one out, something like that. I'm not so sure it needs to be that, though. Like, I feel pretty confident that when he puts a bat on the ball, it's going to be hit hard, that he can work the count a little bit. He can see pitches, get on base with a walk. Like, I have confidence that that's a part of his game. Right now, for the psyche, for the mental part of baseball, I think he needs one of those bleeders. I think he needs a bloop. I think he needs a pop-up that has miscommunication, where it technically counts as a hit. He needs a ball that is hit hard to third base and Bregman dives and it glances off his glove. Or a slow dribbler that he beats out. Like, he just needs the number to improve. And if you've heard this before with baseball players, that when you got a jumbotron like Kauffman Stadium, it's right in your face. It's right there. I mean, everybody can see your numbers. Right, and Bobby Witt Jr. gets to look up there, and he sees 330 with an OPS north of 1.000. Salvador Perez looks up there and sees that he's hitting over 340. Nelson Velasquez sees he's hitting over 300. MJ Melendez sees he's hitting over 330. Vinnie Pasquantino looks up and sees he's near 100. He is below the Mendoza line. He is way beneath the Mendoza line. So he sees that up there. And even though these are professionals, right? Even though these guys have seen big league pitching, I think it's a confidence thing. And I think it alleviates that pressure when you are slumping just to see the number rise a little bit. I mean, Hunter Renfroe is hitting better than Vinnie Pasquantino right now. Vinnie Pasquantino has the lowest average of anybody in the lineup tonight. But I've also had this discussion with a couple of coworkers about Vinnie Pasquantino, and if there was one guy that I was all right with struggling, it's him. And maybe that's me holding on to false hope. Maybe that's me falling in love with what he did in year one, because before his injury last year, he wasn't a tremendous hitter. He was slightly above league average, but really his rookie year is how he took off. It's where he took off. And you'll see, the offseason talks of, man, Vinnie Pasquantino can be one of the better first basemen in the American League. Like, all that noise is heard. But right now, it's just not happening for him. I will say that I'm not worried just yet. That was the big question about this segment. I'm not worried just yet. He just needs the baseball gods to be in his favor for a few games to get that average over 200. And once you kind of feel like things are going your way, the pressure falls off your shoulders. You know that people aren't really talking about you as much anymore. Like Hunter Renfroe, front and center, spotlight when he was 0 for 15. It's like, get this guy out of the lineup. He's not good. And then he has a bleeder get through. He hits a ball hard through shortstop and third base. He hits a 2-run home run on Sunday. He has another 110-mile-an-hour hit the other night. Now you're going, doesn't seem so bad up here. And for Vinnie Pasquantino, I think he almost is putting too much on himself of, Michael Garcia and Bobby Witt Jr. getting on, and I'm not driving him in. Michael Garcia's got 10 RBIs. That's tied with Salvador Perez, and that's the leadoff hitter and the cleanup hitter. You feel fine about where Garcia's at. You feel fine about where Bobby Witt Jr.'s at. You feel fine about Salvi, Melendez, Velasquez. Frazier's a placeholder. Michael Massey, when he's healthy, will take his spot. Hunter Renfroe turning around a little bit. Kyle Isbell, he's slumping a little bit of now, but before this series, he was doing all right. He was doing fine. His WRC plus was above league average. So he's not been a disaster. It's really just been Vinnie Pasquantino. And I think that mental part of it of, I know I'm the one guy that's not contributing, that wears on you a little bit. But baseball's a long season. We all know this. Vinnie Pasquantino, I believe, is going to get back on track. But maybe now it's not going to be that 112-mile-an-hour scorcher down the line. Maybe it's the bleeder. Maybe it's just a little dribbler up the middle. Maybe it's one that they get you in on the hands and you just pop it up over shortstop and the ball falls right in front of the left fielder. Maybe that's the way it happens because it's going to go down as a hit, and that's going to boost your batting average, boost your on-base percentage. I think he needs to see that. He's still a young player. He's not a seasoned veteran like Salvador Perez. And for the most part of his career, he's been a really good hitter. It's only 2 years before this one, of course. But he's been an above league average hitter. He has done this for an extended period of time at the big league level. Not as long as Salvi, of course, but you've faced big league pitching. You've faced good arms before. You've had clutch hits. You've had extra inning home runs. You've had go-ahead RBIs. You've taken an 8-9 pitch walk in a big spot before. Those are all things that start going your way when you're hitting well. Think about MJ Melendez, right? MJ Melendez hasn't really struggled from game one. He's really taken this and run with it. But you're seeing things go his way. You don't believe me? White Sox series, he has the home run bounce off the glove of Dominic Fletcher. Should have been a ground rule double, but goes over the wall. That's luck, right? Last night, rips one up the middle, and it hits off Ryan Presley's calf, and he can't find it. You know what would have happened to Vinnie Pasquantino the way he's going right now? It's going to be, kicked over to the third baseman and Alex Bregman. He picks it up easily and throws him out. Just the way it goes when you're hitting, 100 or 120, $130. It's the way it goes in baseball. So for me, I'm not worried. I just think he needs some luck on his side. I think he needs to have a ball that could be questioned as an error, and it kind of happened last night, although I thought that was an error all the way. He needs one of those that the scorekeeper just gives him a hit. Let him boost the average a little bit, hoping for it tonight. We're still kind of waiting for that breakout game for Vinnie Pasquantino. All right, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, we're going to talk about the fourth outfielder for the Royals and the impact he's already had through these first 11 games. But before we do that, I want to give a shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day, and it's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's talk about Dairon Blanco for our final segment when we return right here on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can give me a follow on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Before we go any further, want to give a shout out to the other sponsor today in eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, and exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is also only available to U.S. customers. We had this debate in spring training about the fourth outfielder spot for the Royals, and at times about who would be starting in center field, because there is a chunk of the fan base that maybe isn't the highest on Kyle Isbell. He really came around on me the more I kind of did a deep dive into his defensive numbers and realized you be a league average hitter, you're going to be just fine out there in center field because that's how good Kyle Isbell is defensively. Then we got to Drew Waters and Dairon Blanco. And Drew Waters, for some people, is considered this prize prospect. You know, he still has a lot in the tank. He's a switch hitter. He hit the furthest home run for the Royals last year. I mean, there are tools to Drew Waters. But Dairon Blanco was always seen as this better fit. You know, if he's not going to play every day, he's going to give you more of an impact than Drew Waters ever could. And Dairon Blanco doesn't have a hit this year. He's also third in the American League in stolen bases. He's a perfect 5 for 5. He's as automatic as Jarrod Dyson was. I mean, he has electric speed. He's a good defensive replacement. And we even saw last year, he almost hit for the cycle. He popped a couple of home runs. There's a little bit of a bat there. Like, you could be looking at a guy that is a more well-rounded player than Jarrod Dyson was. And that is incredibly valuable for a team like this one. It was incredibly valuable for the Royals back in 13, 14, and 15 to have a great defensive replacement, a great pinch runner. But unlike Dyson, although Dyson had his moments of being able to hit decently well, once he got overexposed a little bit, he wasn't the best hitter, but he was a fourth outfielder. Elite defensively, elite base runner, and the Royals have been desperately looking for that again. They re-signed Terrence Gore in 2019, hoping to recreate what once was, but Terrence Gore was strictly a pinch runner. He didn't give you much defensively, and he didn't give you much at the plate. Dairon Blanco is that upgrade. He is that step up. And the impact he has is tremendous because there's just not a lot of guys in baseball that can come off the bench like that. That it's just, he's stealing a bag, first pitch, second pitch, third pitch, fourth pitch, it doesn't matter. He nearly had a chance to win that game for the Royals in Baltimore where he swiped second, swiped third, and scored on a sac fly. Now, the Royals got walked off, and it was just to tie the game, but you feel like, man, if the Royals had just held it down in the eighth inning, they would have had a chance to pad that cushion, and it would have been likely because of Dairon Blanco. You know, there were a couple of times in that White Sox series, he came in, swiped the bag, and was a difference maker, was a game changer. MJ Melendez had to go ahead it on Friday night when I was there because Dairon Blanco stole second base and was in scoring position and scored on that single to left field. It's great to have that weapon off your bench, but it's even better when you can trust him to go play the field. Like, you can pinch run Dairon Blanco for Melendez or Renfroe or Pasquantino or Salvador Perez, and then you can keep him out there. And if the bat, you know, or he has to come bat later on in extra innings or later in that game, he's fine with the bat. He showed last year that he could handle it. It wasn't too big of a moment for him. Now, he's more of a seasoned guy. Last year was truly his first full year at the big league level. In fact, it was his first year at the big league level. He didn't have a chance in 2022. But he's over 30. He defected from Cuba, got a little bit of a late start to his career over in the States, but had been a good hitter in the minor leagues. Last year, above league average hitter, 80 grade speed, a good defender. That's a great impact for a team like this one. Now, you're not wasting a roster spot with Dairon Blanco. And if I'm being quite honest with you, there would be some matchups that favor him over Kyle Isbell. Now, it would be interesting to see the closer the Royals get to the summer. If Kyle Isbell's not cutting it, right? If he's just struggling a lot, he can't handle the everyday responsibilities, which I doubt the Royals view right now that he can't do that. But if Kyle Isbell had this split of can't hit lefties, much better against righties, it would not surprise me if Dairon Blanco was that platoon guy. If he could play center when they're facing lefties and Kyle Isbell plays when they're facing righties. If it was that much of a problem in the lineup. If the Royals offense is carrying the workload and Isbell's struggling, well, that's just what it's going to be. You're not going to screw with the lineup too much. To me, though, it's worth considering. Dairon Blanco's a little bit better of a hitter than maybe people realize. I think that he is somebody that can really handle it well, handle the bat well, good bat control, can go to all fields, got a little bit of pop in there. But right now, the only thing he's doing is exactly what the Royals hoped he would, which would be lethal on the base paths. I mean, you put him in the game, it's automatic at this point. I don't know if he'll go perfect this season, not getting thrown out, but 5 for 5 through 11 games is impressive as hell. That you kind of would just dream of last couple of years. It's like, oh, you're using a bench spot on Terrence Gore. Or you're using a bench spot on Kyle Isbell, but Isbell is fast, not as fast as Dairon Blanco. You have to have a perfect slide step, a quick pop time, a good pitch to throw on, and a good throw from the catcher to nail Dairon Blanco. It's kind of the same thing with Bobby Witt Jr. But Bobby Witt Jr. has been thrown out twice this year. But Blanco is a professional base runner. Not saying Bobby Witt Jr. isn't. I just think Bobby Witt Jr. is a little bit more aggressive. You can see that when Bobby gets on first. He wants to take off on pitch number 1. Blanco can take off on pitch number 1, but he might wait for the count to get to 1-2. Running maybe on a curveball. He might wait till he really times up the pitcher, and that's what you want from your best base stealers. The ones that are fast for sure, have that quick first step, but also know when to go. Not just gun it on pitch number 1 where there could be a pitch out, or the pitcher's at least trying to give the catcher a good throw or a good pitch to throw on. Blanco's got it down to a science. I don't know the first time he's going to get thrown out, but nobody's been close so far. The only one that was close is when he swiped third in Baltimore, and it was a perfect throw made by Adley Rutschman, and Blanco still beat it. He knows how to slide. He knows it's the back corner. He knows that the swim move and everything, but you don't always need the swim move when you're just that fast and you time up the pitcher that well. We'll see if he grabs another bag tonight or multiple if he comes off the bench late in the game. But as for us, that'll do it for another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. You can always follow me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Before we say goodbye, one last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. Tomorrow, we're going to see what happens when the Royals take on the Houston Astros in that series finale. Look a little bit ahead of that series, against the New York Mets. Sean Manaea, the former Royal, or at least former Royal farmhand, will be throwing on Friday night. So we'll look at that series. We'll look at the White Sox, who continue to struggle with injuries, and maybe a little bit more into this run differential thing. Can you really buy it after 11 or 12 games? We'll discuss all of that next time on Locked On Royals. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.